How's it going, Al?
It's going all right, Dan. Where's your sombrero?
Oh, yeah. Should we do these first? It's kind of hard to put them on with headphones on it.
Are you Butch or Sundance?
Well, I think because I'm the younger one, I'd have to be Sundance, right? Sundance is the kid.
Rub it in. All right. Well,
but you get to be Paul Newman, which is not so bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
I'm all right.
A brief remark on our setup. We're, again, still kind of figuring out the correct configuration for our pod studio here. We've got audio dialed in, courtesy of Alex Smite, technical wizard extraordinaire. And you've brought all your learnings from the crew list, which you've been running for a couple of years now, into the audio portion of this. Video was sort of something we tacked on a bit last minute. So right now we have two cameras set up on each of us. One is an iPhone.
We're still fiddling with gear. We have a new piece of gear coming. But
this is where we get, we were realizing that maybe a good little sort of disclaimer for some of the content of our episodes would be categorizing it into Timecode and Cowboys. When we talk about tech and stuff, that's where we get a little timecode. So this is a timecode alert here.
That's a little timecode.
Yeah, we're getting a little timecodey talking
time
about
boys. TCB.
Exactly. Anyway,
a timecode moment.
A timecode moment. Yeah, we had a little tag coming up or something. Anyway, this is probably stuff none of you will actually even notice. But for us, it's worth noting just because.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
But we're having so much fun, which is the.
I'm just going to adjust.
I did vote against the low chair for Dan, but
that folding chair, we had to kill it. We had to strike it. Strike it.
I don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, the chair I'm sitting in is definitely more comfortable.
I can.
Yeah, maybe you can get down to my level.
Come down to earth.
Of course, the
better.
disadvantage of this is at my height level. Oh, nice. That's good.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, first and foremost, we
closed the first one by saying we're each going to pick a movie that we felt predated what would be considered, technically a 70s film.
Right.
And then we realized that was already becoming unwieldy as we were running over titles. And so we picked one title.
Yeah.
And watched it together. And now we will break it down.
Yes. As Al mentioned, we are pivoting. And we left episode 1 basically saying we're each going to pick a film that was kind of a precursor to what we considered to be the 70s, the new Hollywood movement, which, again, for clarity, we should sort of set what we define as like a 70s film. It's, anything that falls between 69 and 77, roughly speaking.
Well, and you're picking 77 because of Star Wars.
Right, exactly. It's like the common...
But Jaws was 76.
75.
75.
Yeah. But I think it's commonly sort of seen as like the beginning of what we consider to be sort of the 70s.
Which,
new
again,
Hollywood.
that's not...
It's loose.
Yeah, well, but also something that has been discussed ad infinitum.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, the beginning, technically speaking, is taken as Easy Rider 1969, and the end of that era is seen as Star Wars 1977. Although, again, there's stuff, it gets a little blurry, the front end, the back end. So it's probably worth noting that we define 70s film as sort of not just the anything that falls within those dates of 69 to 77, but also a style of thinking, a style of filmmaking that's sort of indicative of the new generation that's a little jaded, a little cynical. It's a post-Watergate, post-Vietnam world.
And who went to film school, sort of fed on film noir.
We hit a lot of these tenets episode 1, but I think
we don't need to recover all of that ground.
Yeah, it's worth noting it before we get into this, because I think in talking about each of us picking a film that's sort of seen as a precursor, we realize, well, we just got to pick one.
Yeah, and the thing is, watching it, we discovered too, that's like, what we are loosely defining as a 70s movie could apply to films from multiple different generations. So really the only thing for me that delineates a 70s film would be, other than a particular social statement, something that was of the time, clothes, cars, set in the present day 1970s. But the tone of those movies, the movie we ended up watching was Lonely Are the Brave.
Yes, this is all a roundabout way of getting to the point that we picked one film to kind of act as our segue chapter marker film that ushers in a new era. So Lonely Are the Brave, great film, directed by David Miller, 1961, starring Kirk Douglas. It is our pick of a film that we think encapsulates everything that came to define the 70s. And that includes both the content, the subject matter itself, but also the means of production. This is a film that, we'll get into it, but in many ways kind of was breaking the trend of not having to shoot on sound stages, being on location, trying something new.
Quite a bit of the movie overall was shot not on a soundstage.
Right, exactly.
In New Mexico. Not a lot of sets.
Yeah, I mean, not at all.
The bar, her home.
The home interior. And
the jail.
Yeah.
And the police station. That's probably it.
Anyway, we both did our own. We both watched the film together, which we also recorded. Again, we're going to get that out there on some sort of channel at some point if you guys want to hear our commentary. But as research, we sat down, we watched the film together, which I had never seen.
Right.
You had seen before.
Before you were born. It's probably the last time I saw it, so quite a while.
Then we both kind of did our own sort of research homework on it. Al, I know you found some interesting details just in regards to the provenance of the film, how it came together.
Yeah, and there's a really cool story. It stars Kirk Douglas, whose property it was. He bought the book that it's based on, which I can't remember what the original title was. The Last Cowboy. It's just called
The Brave Cowboy. Yeah, it's an Edward Abbey book, right?
Yeah. And anyways, there was an interesting story that I discovered. I don't know if it was a New York Times article or a New Yorker when they re-examined this picture back early 2000s. He was very insecure about starring in it as he got closer to the beginning of production, and wrote Gary Cooper a letter, kind of very melancholy letter about how, I'm realizing the more I've worked on this story that it really needs a hero, and, who better to play a hero than me? And he goes, not a chance. And basically was telling Gary Cooper that you should be starring in this film.
Wow.
But he passed away like 9 days after they exchanged correspondence.
Oh, so they were talking via letter.
Yeah. And obviously Kirk rose to the occasion. I mean, he was it's probably that, I'm sure every actor right on the, eve of starting shooting, anybody that's working on the movie, frankly, everybody's feeling a little nervous.
Totally. It's interesting though that he felt those jitters even though this was a project he had sort of shepherded.
And it was by then he was a big, huge star.
Yeah.
And of course he could play it.
He is really incredible on it.
He's terrific in it.
I know I don't want to jump ahead because we can kind of hopefully break down the film in somewhat of a order here, but it's worth noting that it's like in a career of amazing performances, this is one that really stood out to me. It's very restrained in many ways. I mean, I think the whole latter part of the film, so much of it plays in close up with him. Yeah. I feel, or at least that's how I'm remembering it, is just like,
well, there's some really powerful moments that happen. And, he obviously we kind of explored the special features that were on the Blu-ray, and Kirk was on there being interviewed and had nothing but like really fond memories of working on the movie. And it's like one of his favorite pictures that he did.
Yeah. Although funny enough, there is a little tidbit in this special feature we watched, which I think this DVD came out in 2008, 2009. So I think on the later end of like that push we were talking about last episode about studios digitizing their films.
I know you're going to do
you want to tell the story?
No, go ahead.
No. I mean, because we both discovered this while watching.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
This bonus feature kind of buried on this, again, early aughts, mid aughts DVD release of Lonely Are the Brave. But Spielberg is interviewed, and he's sort of like the first talking head in this little featurette that's on the DVD. Yeah. The only other thing that's on there outside of like scene selections and the play button. So we watch this little featurette, and it leads off with Kirk Douglas, and then they go to Spielberg, and Spielberg talks
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas, of course. They talk to Spielberg though specifically because this was a film that had a big impact on him as a young filmmaker, and in revisiting it, he was actually putting together a showreel for the Showa Foundation. They were going to honor Kirk Douglas at some point in the early 2000s, and they put together this highlight reel, and they had a bunch of clips from Kirk's career. And Spielberg looked at it and said, "Where's Lonely Are the Brave?" Like that is absolutely one of his best. They couldn't find the print. Yeah. So being Spielberg, he of course has a direct line to Ron Mayer, who's the head of Universal at the time. And he just called him up and was like, do you have this movie in your vault? Can we digitize it? And that's how the DVD transfer even happened in the first place, because I think it was just sitting gathering dust.
And the implication is that he watched it. Maybe Meyer had never seen it. By the way, it's for anybody who hasn't seen it, if you can get your hands on it, it's a really really excellent film. It's really
it's
well
incredible.
made. It's a simple story, but it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And Spielberg touches on this, not to go backwards, but he said when he saw it first as a kid, he was kind of expecting a Western. He goes, there's not a ton of action in it. There's a really well-staged bar fight.
Featuring an actor who went on to star in the Fugitive TV series.
And
right?
who was it Burt Lancaster's double?
Oh, yeah. That was a weird
there's
point.
all kinds of weird things. But anyways, he was just saying that as a kid, he liked it, but it didn't land hard. But rewatching it as, obviously slightly more mature and, adult, he was moved by what the storyline's about. And that's what really holds you.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's worth noting maybe to move in some semblance of a order here to kind of give you the synopsis, the rundown of the film.
Yeah, break it down.
Yeah.
I mean,
Again,
we're not spoiling anything.
We're not
It's been around for a while.
We should say spoiler alert in case someone does watch this, and we are going to get into details about the plot and how it ends, because I think
it's inevitable.
it's very pertinent to our conversation about why this is a
70s film. Yes, exactly.
yes, why this is a proto 70s film before the 70s. It has in large part a lot to do with the ending. It has a lot to do with the ending.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, in brief, this is a film that's based on a book by Edward Abbey, who I've never read his work, but he's most known for writing The Monkey Wrench Gang. And it's sort of about this ragtag group of revolutionaries that are kind of committing like eco-terrorism.
Well, most of his writing then, I'm assuming, was social commentary.
It was very, 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 he wrote these very sharp social critiques of, modern America, and he was very environmentally conscious. So The Brave Cowboy, his novel, was something that I guess must have stuck with Kirk, and he had bought rights to the book. And then having come off Spartacus semi-recently, Dalton Trumbo had been blacklisted and was basically sort of withering on the vine.
And he'd been writing with a nom de plume, won an Oscar with a nom de plume.
Right. And Kirk gave him, I think was this his first job post Blacklist where he was credited?
Spartacus was the first one where he got a screen credit back as Dalton Trumbo.
Right.
Again.
But it was still a big deal.
I think this was the next picture he wrote.
Yeah, Dalton Trumbo got billed by name.
By name.
So that was
kind of broke the blacklist. But it's amazing when you think about that was 1961.
Yes.
They were still, that was like a thing.
Yeah. So
to go out on a limb like that. And Kirk, I mean,
he did it.
He used up a lot of his capital, but it was great.
Yeah. I mean, he had his star power and cachet, and he put it behind people he trusted. I mean, it was a relationship he wanted to maintain. But it's interesting to read the film in that way. This is all me getting to the synopsis, but basically,
this is
how it goes.
containing us. What is it? There's no stopping us. You can only hope.
I know. You got to just listen. Us. You just hold on for the ride here. Okay,
it's going to be what it is.
Yeah,
time is the only thing that'll stop us.
And we're fine. We're good.
Oh, we're good.
We're only like 15 minutes in.
We're good. We good.
And we both cut these, so
yeah. But we're still.
Anyway, so this is all to say that basically the film was a property Kirk connected with, and it's based on this novel that already had a very kind of barbed critique of American culture baked into it. Yeah. Again, haven't read the book, but knowing Edward Abbey and what I've researched on him, that was sort of his MO. So, this was potentially kind of polemical stuff to adapt as a star and say, point to this and be like, this is my next starring vehicle. So the film is kind of a Trojan horse in the sense that it was billed and marketed as a Western. Yeah. In fact, they changed the title to Lonely Are the Brave, which kind of feels like, studios do that to sort of stick their fingers in things. I mean, The Brave Cowboy is almost, it's like the titles are so similar. I'm not quite sure what they thought they were doing, but
the other thing, just to jump in real fast, I'm going to accelerate this explanation a little bit. So in the storyline,
go ahead, accelerate.
Kirk comes back into town after being out working as a cowboy.
Yeah.
A lone guy. Comes back into town to see a friend and his wife and kid, but discovers that his friend is in jail. And it turns out he's in jail.
It's his brother.
Was it his brother?
I think so.
In the book, it's a friend. Maybe now we're conflating the two, but friend brother. He's in jail for the crime he committed was that he's been given a year for, or 2 years, was just helping immigrants, Mexican immigrants, with getting food and a place to work.
He didn't smuggle anybody. He just helped them after they got here.
Yeah.
Which is, immediately struck me as, wow, you could make this movie right now.
Yeah.
In the original book, it was set a decade earlier, and he'd been drafted, the character in jail, and wasn't a draft dodger, but he fundamentally felt nobody could force me to do anything. So both of these guys were independent spirits, both of the characters.
Anti-establishment, individuality versus the state versus the government.
And with full knowledge that they were breaking the law.
Right.
And the character does his time because he knows he broke the law.
Right. And there's that great speech in the beginning where that kind of encapsulates this, where Kirk comes in. I don't know if it's taken verbatim from the book or if it's a Dalton Trumbo flourish. And that's an interesting thing too, because you could almost read this film as like Trumbo kind of working through his own status as a pariah in Hollywood via the Kirk character, right? Like the cowboy in a way is a symbol of, in this film specifically, he's an anomaly, he's an anachronism. Spielberg says it in that little featurette, but he's like a beautiful anachronism, which is
time is come and gone.
Exactly. So in a way, that's also a signifier for anybody that was deemed a red in Hollywood, and the way that sort of was a smear on your reputation. So being sidelined is kind of an interesting thing that I think is explored in this film. But Kirk says this thing early on that gets to the point you were just making, where he's like, you notice there's like signs everywhere these days. I forget how the speech goes exactly, but he's like,
you ever notice how many fences are getting to be? The signs they got on them. No hunting, no hiking, no admission, no trespass, private property, closed area. Start moving, go away, get lost, drop dead.
The very first scene with the character, he wakes up and he's roaming about this wild plain, and you think it's just sort of like, oh, we're in another Western, and you hear a plane going by in the sky, and then you watch him sort of have to make his way across this plane and cut a barbed wire fence
through the barbed wire,
with the sign on it.
To the power company,
exactly,
to get across the road and go into town.
So it's like everything's been.
It explains a lot without any dialogue early on, other than he's talking with the horse is amazing, by the way.
Whiskey.
Main character.
Oh gosh, that horse it breaks your heart. But anyway, not to derail where you were going with the synopsis. So basically, to get back to it.
So he discovers his friend's in jail and why, and he says, well, I got to go see him. They won't let anybody go visit him. So he decides to get himself arrested, gets into a bar fight on purpose, gets arrested, and he's just going to go in there and break him out. For him, it's that simple. It's like, well, he's in jail and he shouldn't be. I'm going to go get him. We'll break out and then we'll go to Mexico.
We both remarked while watching it, even at this early point in the film where the plot had not yet coalesced, there's an energy and a sort of optimism and a naivete from Kirk in his performance that's really beautiful, especially in retrospect, knowing where the film goes, and we'll get there. But I just thought it was worth interjecting here because it's sad. It's almost like the way I kind of thought of it, and I think we both agreed with this, is it's like one of the Lost Boys from Neverland, sort of trying to go rescue Peter or something, where you kind of feel this sense of he's like, it's easy.
Now this he's got a wife and a child, so
exactly.
He's not.
And for context, Gina Rollins, who's a very young Gina Rollins,
excellent in this,
an amazing Gina Rollins, plays his friend / brother's, whatever this character is in jail. That's his wife. And so Kirk goes to visit her in the beginning, and she sort of...
there's an undertone that there was always something going on between the two of them.
It's a kind of beautifully subtextual sort of like, clearly they were either old flames or something was there and not acted upon, but it's great the way they make that dance to very adept actors kind of playing that subtext. It's something like you don't see anymore in films, I feel like. But she does make a point of telling him, like, this, don't do this, like, don't break in there. You don't realize, like what you're up against.
Yeah, what's the line about men? She says,
if it didn't take men to make babies, I wouldn't have anything to do with any of you.
And she has a point, because this is a stupid idea.
Yeah,
but there's something, like you were saying, like an innocence in Kirk's character, because it's like his code is so simple.
Yes,
you really didn't do anything wrong. These people are wrong. You shouldn't be in jail, so I'm going to get you out.
Yeah,
and then it's okay.
And it is this kind of, I think it's deliberate to kind of have this echo of like frontier justice, where it's like Kirk's character is so kind of a relic of the past, that his philosophy and worldview is also kind of calcified or fossilized in the past. Law. Yeah, it's like he's walked into this modern world, 1961 New Mexico, but he still sort of abides by this code that is very similar to, like, Saturday serial westerns or something.
You do get the sense, though, that in a sort of a world-weary way, he knows, he gets it. It's like, I don't fit here anymore.
Yeah.
And you could feel it. It's never spoken, but it's so clearly in his performance.
Not to backtrack, but I mean, it is that first shot that both you and I were pretty floored by, where it's like he wakes up on the plane and you hear a plane.
He
wakes up on the
Yeah, he's lying there having a
the
cigarette
ground,
and a
and
cup
then
of
you
coffee, and he looks up, and there's a jet streaking
says
across
it
the
all.
sky.
There's a lot of really, really incredible images in this film that kind of act as like sort of perfect crystallized moments and close-ups that kind of have the entire story in an image, which I always, I mean, that's so hard to do. It's like, you hear directors talk about that a lot, of like how they want the film to echo on multiple levels, but this really felt like one that did it in a kind of effortless way.
Yeah, clearly it had been very thoughtfully done, but
you and I kept looking at shots going like, God, that's that image right there says the whole story.
Yeah.
Where it's just like him looking back against a barbed wire fence, or that shot when he first comes into town and there's the junkyard of the cars behind him on the horse. It's like you could almost just grab a frame grab of any
and
moment
also
in the movie.
really nice foreshadowing moment that like a lot of little subtle things. Well, that one isn't so subtle. The horse is spooked trying to cross the street, and you know somewhere deep inside that is going to come back into play.
Yeah,
they linger just long enough in that sequence that it's like, well, this isn't just like, you know, having to decide when to go across the road. There's something
deeper.
Yeah,
also, incredible stunt work with the horse. Like
amazing.
there's some insane stuff in this movie.
Yeah, they literally climb up a mountain.
Yeah, the ending is just
holding onto the horse, and it's crazy.
Yeah,
and looked incredibly dangerous. And
I know. I was worried. Yeah, for the stunt double and the horse, mostly the horse. But
so clearly, once he gets to jail and explains what he wants to do, his buddy at first is kind of ready to do it, and they cut through the bars, and then he realizes
to break him out. You're saying
break him
once
out.
he's in, yeah.
And there's also a character who's a vindictive jailer, played by a very young George Kennedy, who is abusive to Kirk's character, but he takes it so that they can.
Yeah, George Kennedy kind of hamming it up
a little bit. And Spielberg made a point that we were kind of sort of noticing, but he really put a pin in it. The performances for the modern people, for loss of a better word, is a little bit, I don't want to say, he was called it's kind of over the top, but I think it's just a little bit more caricature-y than Kirk and Jenna Rollins' character. Very natural, and it's like two styles of acting, but it was a conscious decision, I think. Yeah, and he assumed that too.
I didn't think of that until he kind of said that in that featurette, that like maybe this was conscious on the part of David Miller, the director, to kind of help accentuate that difference between the past and modernity, that like the cops and some of these peripheral characters who are sort of on the sidelines, the ones, you know, making the laws, making the rules, putting the barbed wire up, they kind of play a bit more caricature, like a little broad, I guess. Like
broad, everybody seems a little
yeah, George Kennedy's kind of hamming it up.
Hey, Cowboy, what's your name?
He's this kind of
Mathau's character is probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. He's very much in the vein of like
also world weary, but he lives in a small town and kind of he loves that. They show him kind of sitting looking at his window. You never see it, but he's describing this dog's path in the morning to go pee on a
the regularity
and then cross the street.
Right, you get the sense. I mean, they very kind of clearly hammer it in through a couple cutaway scenes that there's not much going on.
The event of him breaking out of jail sort of creates this crisis.
It's massive
in the town because they have to try to catch him.
So here, maybe we'll tag team this because I'm trying to remember where you left off. Basically, Kirk gets in there. He tries to bust his brother out. He brings a what is it, like a nail file thing? It's like a filing, like a hacksaw
just
file.
The blades.
Yeah, the blades of a hacksaw to essentially cut through the bars. And he's like, this is no big deal. We'll bust out, and then we're good. And his brother is kind of gung ho for a moment, and they start to do their thing, and then it kind of dissipates in this sort of like bittersweet way where his brother just sort of stops him. He's like, "Listen, amigo."
Right when they're about to walk out, he goes, I'm
not doing this with you. Like this has been fun, but I am a father. I have a son back at home.
I can't do 7 years. Which if they get caught, that would have been another 5 on his 2-year sentence.
And Kirk is sort of still in this, he's still in this mindset of like, oh well, I'm impervious to anything. I'm invincible. I can, this is no big deal.
And he looks at him and he
just
doesn't get it. Like, well,
he just doesn't get it.
Come on, we'll be in Mexico by tonight.
Yeah, what does he say? He's like, they'll never catch us, amigo.
He goes, we'll go by, we'll get your wife and kids, we'll go to Mexico.
It's really sad.
Yeah, a lot of amigo.
A lot of amigo in this, which I love. Yeah, they're dropping the amigos.
New Mexico, they shot there?
They shot there. Yeah, they did shoot there. We kept thinking maybe it was
it looked like
Santa Clarita or Sierra Highway doubling, but it was New Mexico.
Yeah.
Once Kirk's brother, his friend, sort of refuses to be on the lam with him, Kirk just goes out on his own. But he's sort of like, he's kind of beautifully unruffled by this stuff. He sort of is like, he just got, for reference, he breaks in
Gets beat up, breaks into
gets
jail.
beat up to get arrested, to get into jail, to then bust his brother out. But in the process, gets beat to shit by George Kennedy, who has this kind of weird homoerotic.
It's a very
bloodlust
weird,
for him.
sadistic kind
It's
of.
a weird performance in general from George.
Telephone call. In the office.
I prefer his later work in which he's just sort of.
But again, it might play into if Spielberg's right, and I think he is, having thought about that. It might have played into. He may have been directed that way.
You're right.
And Jenna Rollins had nothing but like praise for
David Miller. Yeah, who I'd
who
never heard
also
of.
did a '70s movie, which is interesting. That's kind of one that flew under the radar. I don't think a lot of people remember that one. I saw it. Executive Action with Burt Lancaster. And what was the other one? I wrote it down. I can't remember. Another noir that was with Joan Crawford and Jack Palance. I don't know. But with the two of them, they were both nominated for Academy Awards.
Oh, wow. When did that come out? In the 50s?
Something. I wrote it down. I'll have to figure out what.
Sudden Move?
Now, hang on. I can find it. You keep
I'll keep talking. I'll keep
chat amongst
riffing.
yourself.
I'll riff. So yeah, essentially, a sudden what? Sudden Fear is the film
Sudden Fear
that David Miller directed.
Not a building.
Two
Oscar
nominations.
No wins, but both actors.
Wow,
nominated.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
And he has a laundry list of things, but those are the titles that might catch your eye.
Yeah,
but he was he worked up into 1981.
Damn.
Yeah,
crazy.
and I thought he did. I thought the film was well made.
I did. It's one of these weird things where like that little featurette we watched maybe tipped our opinion too much, even though it was like 90 minutes on this early DVD transfer. They did mention, they're talking to the Douglas family, they're talking to Michael and Kirk, and they both kind of stopped short of really giving much praise to David Miller.
Yeah, I got the sense that there was some kind of
he did a good job, but a good job with a great script. So it feels
that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I do think the film is well made. It's not ostentatious or in your face with its style. It's very serviceable to the narrative, and I wonder if it was one of these situations where Kirk, being the star that he was at the time, having this project sort of be his pet project, I'm sure he had director approval. He probably wanted somebody.
Yeah, well, they made a comment in that article that I read where he wrote Gary Cooper that this was regarding David Miller. He just said that in the letter, I think maybe they'd started shooting. They must have when he wrote Cooper, and he said that I'm working with this guy Dennis Miller, and he said he's one of the David Miller, excuse me, not the comedian.
Dennis Miller directed this.
No, he did not direct this. Anyway,
he's like, hey, come on now, baby.
So let me try to join this back up. So I'm working with this director David Miller, and he apparently wasn't giving a lot of notes. He wanted everything to be very real, and he was going to originally he wanted to cast all just people who lived in the
non-professional,
non-professionals. Which didn't happen because he ended up with Jenna Rollins, George Kennedy, Carol O'Connor, Bill Bixby. I mean, there's a list of people. But that was
you were
his
recognizing
original idea.
faces.
I think that was almost going to be like this almost semi-documentary style thing. And and I have a feeling that might have spooked him. But so he may not have been there, with lots of notes that Kirk was relating to, playable things.
Yeah, and it feels too. It's like there's a lot of interiority to this movie, and I'm not just throwing that word out because it sounds nice and fancy, which it does.
It does.
But yeah, it's for all of the credit that I think is due to David Miller, it's not an easy job. There's a lot logistically with the film that I tip my hat.
Tough physical production.
Oh my God, yeah, incredibly complex. The end alone, but what lasts, I think, is Kirk. Like, I think that is sort of the anchor of the film, is his character, his journey, his visage, if you will.
It's a great character.
It is. And I mean, that's, large part why I think he had held on to this for so long as a project he wanted to do. But to wrap up our synopsis portion before we get too far into analysis, Kirk busts out of jail. Again, his brother isn't going to join him. He's on his own. He's on the lam. He stops by Gina Rollins one more time.
For a goodbye.
One goodbye.
Get his stuff.
Just says adios. He's going to head over the hills, head over the mountains into Mexico, into Sinaloa. He says several times he wants to go to Sinaloa. He knows a nice little place there. Him and his horse can settle down and just live the easy life and finally kind of, hang his hat up, so to speak. But
and there's a wonderful line of dialogue when they're almost there, and it's like there's a beautiful bunch of pine. All we have to just cross this road, and you know where that's going.
Of course.
And there's a beautiful, forest of pine
It's
trees.
essentially the latter half of the film kind of feels a little bit disproportionate, and I'm not saying this in some sort of negative way. It's now reflecting back on the structure of the film, I realize how kind of maybe abnormal this is. That in recapping it here, there's sort of a couple beats that feel like they take longer, which is, Kirk says, I'm gonna go over these hills, I'm gonna go over the mountain, I'm gonna escape to Mexico, and I'll be good. Like, I know the cops are on my tail, but this is, no big deal, amigo. He's just so easy breezy about it. And then this manhunt begins, led by Walter Matthau and the state police, but they also involve the Air Force, and they have a couple trigger-happy boys. Yeah, they have a couple trigger-happy boys flying in a very early Sikorsky helicopter. Then there's these extended sequences of the helicopter sort of prowling through this craggy mountain landscape, trying to find Kirk and his horse. And we turn to each other a couple points and we're like, this is dragging on a little bit, but I think it was
some trims in there.
I'm sure it was just because of the expense of getting this helicopter.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, we got to get our money's worth.
Yeah, we spent whatever it is on this helicopter.
There's a scene where a general's yelling at Walter Matthau on the police radio or something, talking about how his helicopter gets damaged.
Sheriff, this is General DeSalius. What have you done with my helicopter?
We're like, that could have been the producer complaining about the cost of
that helicopter costs $100,000.
It is pretty cool though. Kirk takes it down with a very strategic tail shot to the tail fin or the tail rotor.
Hey, somebody's shooting.
Doesn't kill the guys.
There's one other element that we didn't touch on that I should go back and hit. It's about his character. When he gets in the bar fight, the guy's fighting is one-armed, and he lost his arm fighting in the war.
Yeah, and he hurls an accusation at him, saying like,
and he goes, "What did you do?" And Kirk says, "I didn't do anything." And I had a sense that that's not true. So as it plays forward, then later on, when the police are on his tail, they realize, you find out he won a Purple Heart. He was a hero.
Yeah,
but who knows if that was just because he needed to get beat up to get arrested, or if he really just doesn't talk about that.
They say a couple things, right? Because Walter Matthau gets, once the APB is out about him. Is that what they call it when they
all points bulletin.
There you go, man. It's the CSI lingo.
Or Ebola. Be on the lookout.
That just sounds like Ebola.
Bolo. Be on the
lookout. Okay, so when the APB is out there for Kirk, they get some info on him, and like you said, he was a war hero. He won a Purple Heart, but also, and this is key, got discharged because he hit an officer, right? He has an issue with authority. Yeah, exactly.
Which is really what the movie's all about. And talking about the author's other book too, clearly it's like that.
Yeah, the Monkey Wrench Gang.
It's very libertarian.
Yeah,
sort of. This whole.
Right. It's libertarian or proto-libertarian, but with a very environmental kind of basis to it. It's like the I think, which is funny because like it probably is more akin to kind of like a liberal far left mindset now than what is considered lib, but that's a whole other conversation.
That's not, but also Kurt's character seems so much more at home when he's by himself out in the wild with his horse. I mean, that's what he's cut out to do. It's like he never fits when he comes, even though when I say town, it's literally like 3 billion. I mean, this is not a city.
No.
But even
still,
even that
is
he just seems out of place.
He's totally out of place. He has no identification. There's a big deal made about when he gets booked, and they're like, "You got no ID, you got no insurance on you."
And that's probably a callback to the original storyline where it was about a draft card.
Right, that's true.
This guy refused to carry one.
Do you think they changed it just for the sake of? I'm curious about Dalton Trumbo.
If they were just trying to stay away from something that was a hot button issue, because this is now on the doorstep of when we really got involved in Vietnam.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because I do think there's hidden in this kind of Trojan horse of a movie that's ostensibly just a Western, right? And it was billed and marketed as such. It's a pretty scabrous social critique. And I think it's very, very skeptical of institutions, and which totally qualifies it as something that's a precursor.
100%. Yeah, which is why we both went, this is kind of the perfect
and
example.
The
the ending.
Why don't you take it home for us? We've kind of gotten you to the third
now he's
act.
on his own. He's being pursued. And one of the interesting things, just talking about the character's nature, is that he has at least 2 moments where he could just leave the horse and kind of get out on his own.
Yep.
And there's even a line of dialogue from Walter Matthau where he says, if he let that horse go, he'd be scot-free.
Yeah.
But that's not the kind of guy he is.
Yeah.
And there's a moment too where he makes the decision to leave the horse, starts climbing up this rope, and then just sort of looks back, and he can't do it.
Yeah. It's so sad. That look from the horse.
Which leads us to this
melts your heart.
amazing scene of him sort of getting the horse up to the crest of this hill, which is fascinating just to watch and scary. But of course, they get over the hill. Yeah. He does get away from the police that are right there. You think it's all over. It's raining. It's nighttime. They get to the highway, and he says to the horse, all we have to do now is get across the road, and we're going to be sailing. We're in Mexico. And that's what's going to happen if they make it. But there's a lot of traffic. It's raining, and you know what's going to happen. The horse spooks like he did in the beginning. And there's something we haven't touched on. There's a truck that we see. Carol O'Connor's character is hauling toilets from Missouri, which turns also is the character's home where he was born. It
is a seed that's planted early on that doesn't really have a payoff until the very end. But when it does click, we were both like, oh.
Well, it's going to come into play.
It's going to come into play somehow.
More than once.
They do this kind of cross-cutting. Right, where Carol O'Connor's got this load of...
kind of racing to deliver these toilets.
And we're like, how does this connect? Like, we're not quite sure. They're kind of leaving it a little ambiguous, which also feels radical in a way, structurally.
Something's in there, but you're not sure what it is.
And it's gonna jackknife with the structure. Like, this is coming this way, the story's going this way. Literally,
they're going to intersect.
They're going to intersect.
And
literally.
they do, and it's tragic. But there's there are 2 beautifully shot moments at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them they touched on in the special features too, but both of us did the exact same thing. The horse gets injured as well, so they have to put it down. This is all on the road with the rain coming down. All these onlookers are staring down at Kirk. It's a close-up of him getting rained on. You hear the horse struggling, and then the gunshot goes up. And you just see all of the life get sucked out of him. It's a beautiful performance.
In one shot.
And it's so subtle.
It's amazing. I mean, this is what I was thinking about earlier when I said that this is kind of his film, because like moments like that just stick with you. And that's what I will remember about this movie is that final shot, that final moment. It is a really bleak and tragic ending. I think we were both sitting there speechless. I literally had my hand in my mouth the entire time. It's sad. It's, he's just exerted so much energy evading Johnny Law and getting up this impossible mountain slope with this horse and nearly dying several times.
And really hasn't done anything wrong.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything
He broke
wrong.
the law to get arrested, but he hasn't done anything wrong.
Exactly. It's like actually really, really tragic that it ends this way, and that he's just at the side of the road with his horse lying in the mud, writhing, whining, basically slowly dying, and then someone puts it out of its misery, all off camera, and you play that on, it on Kirk, and Michael Douglas says this in the featurette, and obviously we both thought this, I'm sure, while watching it. It's like obviously you didn't have the benefit of the horse off camera when they were getting that close up. So it really is a pretty incredible performance from Kirk, because he's
probably
just playing this.
Script, he's just reading the description of what's happening.
And when you think of it that way, it's like, God, he's just right there.
It's called acting.
It's called acting for a reason. I guess
you're
good
at it. Yeah, and there's a wonderful image. I really got the feeling that although they never call him his death, but he's mortally injured. And then when that horse goes and you see all the air go out of him, he's not going to survive the ride to the hospital.
That's the thing. It's like a spiritual death. It's a spiritual death of, and this is now maybe where we get into sort of our analysis, philosophical mode.
We've kind of been sprinkling throughout the entire description.
It's the end of the West.
I think this is the analysis
what
we've been doing.
But synopsis as well. Yeah. It's the end of the West. It's the end of this character. It's the end of a cowboy, right? It's like the end of a way of being, a way of thinking. And so that's that moment at the end, although maybe it's not, quote unquote, the death scene, it is the spiritual death, and it does mark a really, really significant kind of, I don't know. It's just, it feels like, where do you go from here?
The last image in the movie is as the ambulance pulls away, it kind of tilts down. I think it tilts, or maybe it's a cut.
Booms, tilts.
His hat is just lying, his cowboy hat is lying in the road, getting rained on, and it says it all.
Yeah. It's literally his hat in the rain. We boom or tilt down to land in a close-up of this cowboy hat. sitting on this road at night in the rain. It's like really powerful. And if you take the film, again, you know, it works on many levels, but I think it's a real sign of it being very precise, very strategic kind of storytelling in that, you know, the first image and the last image tell the whole story.
Yeah.
You start with this cowboy waking up, tipping up his cowboy hat to see an airplane in the sky.
And he's
then
happy.
He's
out,
happy.
You know?
He's still with his horse.
Yeah, he's out coming back from a job. Whiskey.
And then by the end, it's like, it's just the lone hat in the rain.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
He has nowhere to go.
So
There's
Dad,
nowhere for him to be anymore.
exactly. He doesn't have, the world has outpaced him.
Yeah.
He doesn't belong
And it's
in
like
it.
you get the sense he knows. I guess that's what I was trying to articulate earlier. It's like I got the feeling watching it that he sort of knows.
Yeah.
He knows it. It's
Yeah.
not like it's going to come
He's
back.
not, right. I guess, yeah, that's important too, because I was kind of hitting this
he's
point.
aware.
Hitting this point of him feeling like there's a naivete and a sort of Lost Boy Neverland quality to him, which is true, but that doesn't discount the fact that I think he is also very
He's self-aware.
keenly
He knows,
self-aware
yeah.
that like my days are numbered.
Yeah.
I don't belong here.
Or that already, I know
Yeah.
I don't belong here.
I got to get over to Mexico because I can't stay here. So Dad, this was, you know, largely, this was your pick. I had not
Yes.
seen this film. You mentioned it to me before, and I think it has probably come up in conversations about,
Yeah.
you know, the pre-70s cinema. Excuse me. But why did you pick this?
Well, I remember being moved by it at the time, and one for that opening, which was left a really good impression on me because I just said, "Wow, talk about telling a whole story."
Did you see it in theaters? You would have been like 2.
No.
Okay.
I didn't see it in theaters.
No. Was it like TV or something?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I must have,
'Cause it
or
sounds like
maybe
it was hard to watch.
a new art thing, where you know. But it was
Yeah.
hard to find. And I think the last time I saw it, I was showing it to Tam, your mom, before you were born. So I actually had forgotten a lot of what happens at the end. I just knew, like, you know, just the slimmest outline of the plot anymore.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
So it was fun. I kind of felt like I rediscovered it. But the reason I picked it is I thought I remember the feeling I had after seeing the movie reminded me a lot of some of the reactions I had when I first went to a lot of my favorite 70s films.
Totally. And I mean, having now digested the film and watched it with you, like I concur that this definitely falls in that emotional wheelhouse of what we are designating 70s film. If it's, you know, it's not 70s by date, by number, by chronology, but it's definitely 70s by spirit and ethos.
And I think that's kind of what happened, because this isn't going to be that 70s show. We're not going to do this forever. We have to branch out. But it was a perfect way to start this, only because, you know, for me, it was really when I was getting old enough to really get a movie, like at a deeper level. And I could completely relate to what Spielberg was saying, talking about seeing this as a kid, thinking it's going to be a Western. And part of that's just bad marketing. But we're not going to go on and on and on about the 70s movies, but it was the perfect way for us to start. And then, you know, we want to talk about all kinds of movies, and
of
not
course.
just movies.
No, we just wanted to start here. Wait, you think I only wanted to make it a 70s show?
No, I'm only afraid that people that are listening are going to think that's all we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we do. I mean, yes, that's a good point. Like, we definitely want to switch things up. We want to do like a field trip episode. We're not just going to be covering things that are like of a particular era, and we want to mix it up. But back to the topic at hand.
Yes, I was going to say, so
come on, it's a great movie.
it's a great movie, and that's why I picked it. And you'd never seen it, so you know, what were you've kind of articulated your impressions, but how did you feel about it when you saw it?
I really liked it. I mean, I do actually have, this is interesting because I have a memory. I don't know what age I was at, but it was probably around the same era that you were starting to show me a lot of like the 70s movies we talked about in episode 1 of our pod. So 12 or 13, when we were starting to kind of get into those deeper cuts.
Yeah.
I think you had described this film to me. So I have a very vivid recollection of you like describing the opening to me. Like, I remember you talking about sort of how iconic that opening is. And it's a weird thing too, where like my memory of it via your synopsis was somehow better or bigger than what the film ended up being. And I think the funniest thing, I mean, this is worth mentioning, is that I know you had talked about this film for several years. I'd never seen it. Again, it was sitting in your DVD book. I kind of assumed, just based on the era it came out, 61, that it was going to be color or CinemaScope. And it is scope, but it's black and white, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And that was something that it seems like a minor detail, but popping the DVD in, I was like, oh, it's black and white. And you're like, yeah. And anytime you described it to me, I always kind of envisioned that opening in color for some reason because of the barbed wire and the planes and all that. But it really does work. And I actually think that's a big element of what makes this movie so symbolic in a way, is that like black and white has this power of just kind of, there's this high contrast resolution to the images. And especially at the end when he's going up that mountain slope
and
with the horse.
There's some wonderful lighting by Phil Lathrop in there, and
who worked with
very
Jack,
noir
right?
touches.
Oh yeah, especially
my father worked with him a couple times,
especially in the jail cell.
And there's a moment
with Gina
I think
Rollins.
with Gina Rollins in there in the
there's some really nice touches.
Yeah.
It's definitely, which also I think we can analyze every category of this and talk about how it qualifies as a 70s film, but I think that also pushes it towards the future in terms of like the lighting being something that's moving beyond just Studio 3-point stuff. And it's a little moodier. It's a little grittier. It's a little bit.
It's funny. You bringing that up. This is a little bit off subject, but talking about lighting, and you think about some of the really beautifully lit noirs that were very moody and shadowy, and you see part of a face. And then it's still, I guess this is just something that popped into my head. It is, apropos of nothing.
Please share.
But when they were doing The Godfather, I can't believe that the people that were running the studio, not all of them, were going, these dailies are too dark and you can't see anything. It's like, well, it's not the first time anybody's lit for mood.
No.
Thank God that they left them alone.
It was the beginning of the epidemic of brightness, which we could totally have another pod about.
Well, and we should. This whole thing that all comedies have to be bright. No, it's like, what? Why?
Yeah, it's bullshit. I think Gordon Willis was dubbed the Prince of Darkness, if I'm not mistaken.
But he's not the first, though. That's my point. Yeah. It's like the movies looked like this, in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to throw out to you, because you had just mentioned, oh shit, this is what happens to my brain now when we go sideways.
Hey, you took us on this detour.
Oh, I know. There was an article in today's LA. I don't know if it was New York Times or LA Times about the studio. It was really good review and write up, but the people who co-created the show are all huge Larry Sanders show fans.
Amazing.
Which
I love Larry Sanders.
We loved. And so
it's a great show.
And when like Seth Rogen and the other guy that he partners with, they were saying it needs to be sort of like that, the way they brought in real life people and made fun of themselves, and they got some of the other two writers that worked with them, I think, wrote on the Larry Sanders show.
Oh, that's great.
So, which is why there's
Larry Sanders is also just another one that was ahead of its time. Yeah,
it's really
it predated and set the mold for like what became kind of the Curb thing, but
or 30 Rock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it gently pokes fun at Hollywood.
All types of celebrity. Yeah, people will come on and kind of pastiche themselves and lampoon themselves.
But I thought that was a nice little thing. That's
Yeah, that's a good detail.
That's why I emailed you that article.
I don't think I got that email. You sent it from your iPad?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check.
You got it.
Anyway, I feel like we gotta find a way to bridge this into why it's a 70s precursor. I mean, we talked about it.
Well, okay. I mean, some of the thing that checking off some boxes. It's very gray. There aren't really, other than the George Kennedy character. I mean, Walter Matthau's character isn't a villain, but sort of similar to, Bert's or Kirk's journey as a righteous cowboy and wanting to live on his own. Walter Matthau's character is just doing his job. I don't think you get the feeling he wants Kirk to get away.
Oh yeah, he has that amazing.
He admires him.
He has that amazing aside that we both clocked. It's like a blink and you'll miss it line where he kind of says it under his breath, and it's during this manhunt sequence at the end. It kind of drags on, and he's standing there by this Jeep with his sort of inept partner from the police force, and he kind of says under his breath, like, we're
chasing a ghost. Invisible horse, invisible cowboy.
There's a sense that, again, Kurt is already sort of a figment. He's already kind of an anachronism that's dissipating into the void or something. It's weird.
Going into the ether. It's like smoke is dissipating. But you also get the feeling that Matthau and
he respects
Kirk Douglas probably would have liked each other.
Because
they, in a weird way, they have the same kind of, they
have a similar credo and code. And by the very end, when Kirk is lying there in the mud and you just listen to his horse die, Matthau comes up and they say, "Is this the guy you're looking for?" You know, there's a squad car that intercepts because there's been an accident, and lo and behold, Walter Matthau's there, and he looks Kirk dead in the eyes, and then looks at the officer who asked him if that's the guy, and he goes,
I can't tell. Man I'm looking for, I never saw him this close.
but it's,
but,
you know.
but all he had to do, and he knows who it is.
Oh, yeah.
He knows.
It's one of those great sort of like,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's kind of that dynamic that becomes an archetype in later film, and you see it again in something like Heat, where Pacino and De Niro are kind of tit for tat, and they both kind of respect each other. There's the pursuer, and there's the criminal, there's the hunter and the hunted, and it's like there's kind of a understanding between the two of them. But in this film, it has a very kind of bittersweet, very...
It does. Well,
you know,
and that's exactly why we feel that it's got that template that like a classic 70s movie would.
Yes.
It's at the end, it's, you know, it's tragic, but it's not played just for tragedy like a Greek drama.
No. Oh, very telling too. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not notice any overt instances of score or composition, which was a big deal, I think, in films that were pre-72. This is something that we haven't talked about, that there was usually wall-to-wall music cues to really guide you along as an audience member as to how to feel, to kind of put your nose in the direction of like, this is sad, this is happy. It's like, this movie has cues, but if it does, I don't remember them.
It's not overpowered.
It's
by
very
the music.
subtle. It's very understated. And especially at the end there, it's like they let that play. They really do let that moment.
Yeah, the
play.
rain and
there might
all
have been
the-
a swell
the-
or
the
something when the
horse.
horse gets hit, but it's like, you know, that struck me, that like a moment like that in a film, you know,
Well, you
4
know,
or 5 years earlier would have been.
It's funny that you brought that up too, because there's another thing that they take advantage of very well is off-camera sound. The very beginning tells the whole story. Well, you hear the jet before you see it.
Yeah.
On his face, and he kind of looks up, and we know what it is. We all know that sound.
Yeah.
And at the end, it's the same thing with the horse getting put down. All that plays off camera, and it's on Kirk. It's the same shot, really.
Yeah.
Except
You're right.
one, he's happy and out on his own, riding the range, and in the other one, he's.
I didn't even think of that. That's
I didn't
actually
either
pretty
until just
fascinating.
now. So
And that in and of itself is a pretty modern device.
yes.
To do off-screen diegetic sound. And like to,
Oh please,
you know?
natural.
What, you
That
don't
is
like
such a-
diegetic?
No, it's such a fucking film term. Excuse me.
What, you guys didn't say diegetic?
No, we'd say source.
You know, you weren't
music.
in that in room going, the diegesis has the
We weren't doing
okay,
that.
source sound, nat sound.
Nah.
It is revolutionary in that they're like trusting the audience to connect the dots, right? Like to be like, you know that sound, you get it, you know that's
You know
happening
what's
right
happening.
off camera.
You don't need to see it.
Which is like, you know, again, this is another device that I feel like has become so sort of standardized and absorbed into the normal language of what filmmaking is that we almost don't think about it now. But in 1961, I think that was a pretty big deal,
I think
right?
so. I mean, it doesn't remind me of other uses of off-camera sound where perhaps somebody's looking in the sky and slowly looking towards the ground, and you hear a rocket ship landing. That's purely for financial reasons, because they don't want to show it. But this was not
Yes.
that. This was a conscious choice
Yes,
to play
this
that.
this was
speed over.
stylistic
Yes.
off-camera sound, not cheapskate.
yeah.
Off-camera sound.
We'll have it take off once, but then every other time, let's
you
play
could just
it on
hear
the
it.
faces.
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
people.
You just play it on the close-up. You just play it on the close-up. That's all you.
Hey,
got
it
to
happens in the very first, and I say first in terms of production, Star Wars film.
do. Yes,
Lots of lightsabers retracting off camera,
Yeah.
and that was financial.
It was hard to get the lightsaber.
It was an effect.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
It's really funny that film sort of spelled the end of this brief flowering. We can
But
get into all that.
yeah, and we will, I think,
Yeah.
too. But it's like that.
Because we got love for Star Wars. I'm not over
Oh,
here.
hell
hating.
yeah.
We have love for popcorn movies, and I think a lot about this pod too is that we're not coming in here with some sort of snobbery about film. We're very much the type of people that like approach things
A good
for what they are.
entertaining movie is a good.
I
Entertaining movie.
love things that make me think. I love things that make me laugh. Like I'm
Austin
saying this in the
Powers.
broadest sense. Yeah, Austin Powers is fucking great.
It's funny.
I love.
I
that
love
shit.
Doomsday.
Yeah.
or not Doomsday. Deadpool and Wolverine. Loved it.
Oh, you love that?
yeah,
The Ryan Reynolds.
yeah. It was hilarious, and then action packed.
What other movie hinges? What other superhero movie hinges on a pre-existing knowledge of studio IP and mergers and acquisitions?
But they have a lot
I
of
don't
fun
know.
with it.
I guess they do, but
I
it's
like
also kind of a symptom
like that.
of where we are as a culture.
I
Anyway,
like the Fall Guy. I thought they did a good job with that.
we can get into modern films, but
I don't know if that's modern, other than the date it was made.
well, no, just things that aren't
Yeah,
from
no,
1961.
we will.
But I think Lonely Are the Brave is actually strikingly modern and ahead of its time. And I really, really, really do feel that this was a great pick on your part to kind of act as a gateway chapter marker to bring us from the Hollywood of old into the Hollywood of the 1970s that we'll be talking about. I'm not sure how we're going to go through this. I think we threw out in the first episode some sort of sense of going film by film, which is absurd, and we shouldn't do that.
know.
I think we got to pick, like, you and I both bring a film next time that's like falls within the dates of 69 to 77, and I think we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and then
You know
maybe
what I mean?
that's maybe it's 3 and out with just focusing solely on
that's
that,
it.
the 70s and what may have led to
We
the 70s.
have liner notes we can put online. We've got,
If nothing
Yeah.
else, if anybody that has not seen that picture, I think you'd do yourself a favor if you could find it, rent it, or stream
it's
it. I'm sure
extremely
it's available
powerful
to stream. It's really good.
Yeah, it's surprisingly hard to find online. So the fact you have the DVD is good.
Yeah, I'm glad I have it, but we'll figure something out. But it's out there. It's definitely worth catching.
It definitely is worth catching. Again, a very sad ending. Spoilers. We did spoil the ending if you haven't seen it.
Well, it is.
It's bad. It's sad. It's a sad ending.
It is
Yeah, it
66
is.
years old, so it's like I don't think we're really spoiling the ending.
Yeah, but for those who haven't experienced it.
Oh wait, is that right? I got that wrong. 58 years old. 54 years old.
61. It came out. Yeah.
54.
Is there anything else you want to mention just in regards to sort of the film itself and its
No, I think we've
history?
covered pretty much all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I have any other tidbits that I learned from a couple of things I was able to find online about it. But
Yeah.
it's really well done. I think it's one of the best things Kirk Douglas did.
Yeah, 100%.
And like we say, I think it's a good intro into what was to come in terms of film, because I would consider a lot of those movies made in the mid to late 60s, which would have been right after this, to fit into that canon of 70s film.
Yeah.
Not all of them, because there was a Hello Dolly was sprinkled in there.
True. But like The
um,
Graduate, Seconds,
Easy Rider, all those films.
Yeah.
So I think this is again, we touched on this a little bit on our first one. All those young guys that were making these movies. Now, in this case, this is a veteran director.
Yeah.
But all the people who were just starting to go to film school, these were the movies that they were going to see.
Yeah.
And, I think that works for every generation.
Yeah.
The movies that you see at that impressionable age, like I was when I saw the 70s movies, and when you watch them with me, it's the same thing for every generation. And, for those people, they were getting a diet of these kind of films.
100%. Yeah. I think that was a really good point you made the first episode, and something that I think I hadn't really thought about. Like, I guess it was just sort of a given, but like, it's worth noting that was a major impact on, that was the seed that was planted to allow the 70s to kind of flower in the way it did.
And there was
directors
this
that
kind
were
of
there.
rediscovery of all those films that a lot of these people may have been just too young to see in the theater, but
Yes.
then in film school, they were
like-
gobbling all that
right.
stuff up.
Or even just, it's very telling that the one bonus feature on this DVD for Lonely Are the Brave features Spielberg kind of tub thumping for the film,
Well,
which
and
is big.
you made a good point about Vanishing Point, that it's become it's a filmmaker's film. It gets a lot of love from other
Yes.
directors and filmmakers, and so does this.
Yeah.
Clearly,
It gets a lot of love.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, that was clear evidence of it. But I think it's the type of film that, it has this very, very sneaky way that it works with genre, and I think it kind of qualifies. Martin Scorsese talks about how filmmakers can be smugglers, and they take a genre, they take a topic, and they can smuggle in things that are actually more nuanced or complex. So this is nominally, ostensibly a Western, in the vein of.
And a man out of time story.
Really. But it's a man at a time story, but it's also about so much more.
Yeah.
And I think that very nature of being able to kind of play on multiple levels is also
there are a lot of
makes
layers to
modern.
it, and complex characters.
Yeah.
I mean, some are very one-dimensional, the George Kennedy character, but even that though, like you made a good point. There's something weird going on. With that guy. He doesn't just want to beat up Kirk because he looks at him the wrong way.
Yeah.
There's something else going on.
And he does eventually get the upper hand on him, we should say, and it's quite a satisfying moment.
Yes, it is.
It's like that classic kind of reveal of like, you think he's got the jump on Kirk, and then Kirk's got the gun on him.
Yes.
It's like, okay,
But he
you
never
knew that was
kills
coming.
anybody.
He doesn't. His character is very chivalrous.
Yeah.
It's like a,
He has a righteous code. So,
yeah.
I think we're getting to the end here.
Yeah.
So,
So what are we doing next time, Al? You want to, each of us can bring a film that falls within the dates of what we deem classic 70s, 69,
yeah,
to
let's
77.
go for the sweet
Yeah.
spot, and that'll be our third and final sort of focus on the 70s episode.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. That will be fun.
You know,
I mean, I
we'll-
can already think of quite a few.
Well, let's not spill the beans for our listeners.
And then we are, we're hoping to get some guests on here.
I'm not hoping. I've already reached out to a couple people.
Cool.
That may, who knows which one will be next, but
Yeah.
we should close this 70s thing out.
Yeah,
And then
definitely.
we'll have a guest. That'll be our next one after that.
That'll be our next one.
So please, I want you to know, anybody listening, how much we appreciate you guys and gals listening. And I hope we're, entertaining on some level.
Yeah. Hey, and if anything else, you're just getting some deep cut recommendations from us, and we promise we're gonna move the focus further afield. It's not just gonna be like guy movies from the 60s and 70s.
Absolutely not. No.
That's not the point of this podcast.
It's not. This isn't a broadcast.
Is it a broadcast?
It's not a broadcast.
I mean, it's kind of a broadcast.
Is it? Well,
Yeah.
if Colin was on, your brother, but
Oh, like literally, you're saying?
Literally.
Okay.
No,
okay.
it's not
like
a
colloquially. Okay.
and we are going to have we will have all kinds of people on.
Yes. So anyway, podcasting from the foothills of Mount Wilson, this has been Timecode Cowboys.
Timecode Cowboys. Adios.